Now, from CBS4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning, I'm Jim DeFede, and welcome to Facing South Florida. In today's show, I talked to Miami's Archbishop Thomas Wensky about the strong stand he and his fellow bishops across the country are taking in response to Donald Trump's move to separate children from their parents when they seek asylum in the United States.
There's nothing wrong with saying that we want to make America great again, and that should be an aspiration for every American citizen. But we're not going to make America great by making America mean.
We'll have more on that later. But first, we turn to our investigation that has uncovered millions of dollars of wasteful spending after Hurricane Irma, money that all of us are going to have to pay. We're talking about debris removal, and the bills are coming due. Before the storm, there were companies that were ready and willing to do the work, cleaning up the Florida Keys. Those companies have been chosen in advance through an open and competitive process to ensure that taxpayers would be protected and get the best rates possible. But 48 hours after Hurricane Irma hit the Keys, Governor Rick Scott disregarded all those other contracts and issued 2 new emergency contracts. And that turned out to be a very costly decision.
I think what you're going to see today all around the state is you're going to see more resources.
After Hurricane Irma, Governor Rick Scott took responsibility for the state's recovery.
Get this all cleaned up and hopefully get more tourists back in our state.
As part of that cleanup, the governor ignored companies already hired to remove debris and instead brought in more expensive companies to do the work. Now the bills are coming due, and we are learning the governor's emergency debris removal contracts will end up costing the taxpayers an additional $28 to $30 million. That, according to an analysis by CBS4 News, which reviewed more than 1,000 pages of invoices submitted by the 2 companies awarded the contracts, Munia Construction Management, better known as MCM, and Community Asphalt. We then compared their rates to the rates charged by the 3 companies that the governor ignored. Those companies, Ceres Environmental, Bergeron, and Ashbridge. We chose those 3 companies because all 3 of them told me that they were willing to do the work in the Florida Keys, but were never asked. Ron Bergeron is the head of Bergeron Emergency Services.
We would have done whatever we were asked to do. Of course.
That's the bottom line. You would have done whatever you were asked.
Absolutely.
Tonight, we're learning the governor did not hold himself or his administration to that same standard.
As CBS4 News first reported in October, the rates being charged, especially by MCM, were believed to be the highest in the state. For example, MCM is charging taxpayers $913 a mile for every curb and gutter they sweep. Ceres would have charged $123 a mile, Ashbridge $32, and Bergeron just $12. Are you aware of what MCM's rate was for per mile work?
No.
It was over $900 a mile.
Seemed a little high.
To haul rock, sand, soil, and sediment, MCM charged the state $77.50 a cubic yard. Ashbridge would have charged $11, while Ceres and Bergeron would have charged between $6.50 and $15.95. To remove a washing machine or a dryer or a stove, MCM charged the state $969 for each and every item. Ashbridge would have charged $75, Ceres $48.15, and Bergeron $60. However, it wasn't until MCM and Community Asphalt started submitting bills for all their services that the true cost to taxpayers of these emergency contracts could be measured. We looked at $30.1 million worth of bills submitted by MCM. If that same work had been done by Ashbridge, it would have cost taxpayers $10.4 million. Ceres Environmental would have done it for $9 million, and Bergeron, $8.5 million. A similar story can be found with Community Asphalt. We reviewed $13.5 million in invoices they submitted. Ashbridge would have done it for $5.5 million, Ceres $5.6 million, and Bergeron would have done that same job for $4.1 million.
This is a rookie mistake made by a state that shouldn't be making rookie mistakes.
Scott Amy is with the Project on Government Oversight, a nonpartisan group in Washington that examines wasteful spending by the federal government.
There are pre-existing contracts that exist at the local level, the state level, and even the United States government has pre-existing debris removal contracts. The state could have used any of those contracting vehicles, and they decided not to. And I worry that then that is going to then translate to the federal taxpayer overpaying. And so, I wouldn't be surprised if, the state of Florida ends up having FEMA, the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General, and probably Congress asking some questions about how they went about this process.
The reason why Amy is concerned about federal tax dollars being wasted is that the president has already promised to reimburse the state for the cost of the cleanup.
It's outrageous, and it's not reasonable. It can't be justified.
When we first uncovered the existence of the emergency contracts last year, we interviewed the founder of Ashford, Randy Perkins. Now, 6 months later, his opinion hasn't changed.
With the benefit of hindsight and really being able to go through the numbers and dissect them, it might even be worse than I thought it was back then.
Perkins said the $913 a mile MCM charge for sweeping curbs and gutters showed no one was reviewing the bids and that the entire process was rushed to the detriment of taxpayers.
That one line item, should have stood out to people at DOT evaluating these bids and said, we're making a huge mistake here.
Ceres Environmental issued a statement. The contracts are in the public record. The prices speak for themselves.
If this was an open bid and not selected people to bid, you probably would have gotten much more competitive rates.
Amy, with the Project on Government Oversight, said Governor Rick Scott has to take responsibility for what occurred.
It just seems as if they made some mistakes in this administration that should not have been made, and the likely result is that they're going to overspend, and taxpayers are going to end up picking up a lot of that tab.
When we first aired that story earlier this week, the reaction was swift, with Democrats predictably criticizing the governor. But Rick Scott responded by issuing a statement, saying if he had it to do all over again, he wouldn't change a thing. And in defending his decision, both the governor and his staff have issued statements that are misleading or demonstrably false. In fact, they raise more questions than they answer.
I thought most of these lessons were learned after previous hurricanes and what we went through 12 years ago with Hurricane Katrina.
Scott Amy is with the Project on Government Oversight, a nonpartisan taxpayer watchdog group that has been around since 1981.
I'm actually shocked to hear that we're kind of making the same mistakes that we made, 10, 15 years ago.
So how did this happen? Before Hurricane Irma hit, there were companies already under contract to remove debris in Monroe County, but Governor Rick Scott and his Florida Department of Transportation disregarded those contracts and pushed through a new agreement. The justification by the governor's office has always been the same. On September 12th, FDOT received a request from Monroe County for assistance. The person the state says made that request is Martin Centerfit, Monroe County's emergency manager.
I did not make a request.
CBS4 News obtained a copy of this sworn video deposition in which Centerfit was asked about the emergency contract. He said it was this man, Leo Ashat, the deputy director for the state's Division of Emergency Management, that offered the help.
He stated he had resources available and asked if we would like those resources to help. And I said yes.
Did you expect FDOT to go out for emergency bids for third-party contractors to perform disaster debris recovery services?
I did not.
Did FDOT inform you that they were going to go out for an emergency bid for disaster debris recovery services?
No.
Centerfit said when he learned the state was bringing outside companies to come in, he tried to stop it by calling the director of emergency management for the state, Brian Kuhn.
And I asked him what's happening, and he said that, well, DOT was involved with debris collection. And I asked him why, and he said, well, that's what happened. And that was the conversation. He would not go into detail.
He would not go into details. Up next, I confront the governor during a campaign stop in Hialeah, and we uncover another incredible piece of video that shows the governor is not telling the truth. That's when we come back.